Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Cunningham Town Board. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees.
This is the second of 3 meetings tonight.
Trustees Ammons.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Hazen.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Here.
Wu. Chair Marlin.
Here. Next up is approval of minutes of the previous meeting from January 8th and the special meeting on January 8th. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Jared. Any corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Public participation. Mr. Townsend, did you want to speak during the town board or the city council meeting? Okay, all right, we'll hold that. Okay. Well, I would like to make a statement during this part of the meeting. It's a bit long, but it's important, and so settle back. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the City of Urbana to address opinions expressed by the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners in a letter dated January 31st regarding the city's recent appointment of Ms. Danielle Chenoweth as a commissioner. I'll begin by emphasizing the city's strong support for the mission and purpose of the Housing Authority, which is stated in the organization's bylaws. Quote, the mission and purpose of the Housing Authority of Champaign County is to serve and empower people of Champaign County needing assistance in attaining decent, safe, sanitary, and affordable housing in the county through a proactive administration of programs and funds in cooperation with other public and private agencies dedicated to the improvement of housing and human development. End quote. I'd also like to acknowledge the productive working relationship the City of Urbana has had with the Housing Authority over the years to provide housing for those who are most in need, and I thank the Board of Commissioners for their voluntary service to our community. For some background, the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners is appointed by the mayors of Champaign and Urbana and the chair of the Champaign County Board. Each entity appoints 2 members to serve 5-year terms. A 7th appointment alternates between the cities of Champaign and Urbana. Up to 2 elected officials are allowed to serve on the Housing Authority Board. In Urbana, the mayor nominates board candidates and the city council votes on approval. Following receipt of the January 31st letter from the Housing Authority Board, the City of Urbana has examined a number of documents, including the 1997 Intergovernmental Agreement, which governs the HACC Board appointment process, and the HACC bylaws, which address commissioner roles and responsibilities. We've also researched the property tax exemption protest in question as to whether it presents a conflict of interest for our appointee. The Cunningham Town Board, comprised of members of the Urbana City Council, passed a resolution of protest in August 2016 objecting to the Housing Authority's application for a property tax exemption for Hamilton on the Park, which is a low-income housing tax credit. The resolution of protest was initiated by former Township Assessor Dan Stebbins, an independent elected official, in the name of the township as a taxing district. The Champaign County Board of Review had previously recommended denial of the exemption. The Illinois Department of Revenue will make the final decision on whether the application for exemption is granted or denied, and the case is proceeding in a routine manner. I would like to emphasize the former township supervisor, Michelle Mayo, the current supervisor, Danielle Chenoweth, had no say in or control over this resolution of protest. The Department of Revenue will determine the outcome of this case. No further actions by the Housing Authority Board can have an impact on the outcome other than to possibly withdraw it. The Housing Authority contends that a conflict of interest exists for Ms. Chenoweth to serve as commissioner as long as this tax case is being considered. Whether or not a conflict of interest exists is a matter of opinion that can be resolved by an impartial third party. To date, the Housing Authority has not furnished citation to legal authority for their opinion on the conflict of interest. And frankly, at this point, that's the least of our concerns. The City of Urbana is more concerned about recent actions taken by the Housing Authority that reflect a lack of transparency what appears to be a deliberate lack of communication with a duly appointed commissioner, and overstepping authority related to board appointments. It's important to note that the Housing Authority is a municipal corporation subject to the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. HACC bylaws state, quote, provisions of the Open Meetings Act will govern all actions by the Board of Commissioners, end quote, and that notification of meetings shall be provided to, quote, commissioners and attorney representing the authority. This notification did not occur last month. Ms. Chenoweth's appointment as a commissioner was approved by the Urbana City Council on December 18, 2017. The city sent a letter dated December 22nd notifying Ms. Chenoweth of her appointment. Shortly thereafter, Ms. Chenoweth contacted the HACC interim director and staff requesting information about meeting schedules and meeting materials. She was told that the regular January board meeting was canceled. The next meeting would most likely be in February. Therefore, we were very surprised to learn that the Housing Authority held a special board meeting on January 30th, 2018, during which they approved hiring a new executive director. This is arguably the single most important action the board can take, and it was done at a special meeting without notifying one of the board members. The failure to send a meeting notice to a duly appointed commissioner violates HACC's bylaws, the spirit of the Open Meetings Act, and the principles of trust and accountability reflected in our intergovernmental agreement. Since this meeting was conducted in violation of HACC bylaws, we believe the vote should be repeated in a properly noticed meeting to eliminate any possibility that the action was null and void. The City of Urbana insists that our appointee, Ms. Chenoweth, receive proper notification of all meetings and access to documents. In addition, the board reportedly discussed how to reject seating Ms. Chenoweth at the special meeting. In fact, the HACC board does not have the authority to reject an appointed commissioner. HACC bylaws outline a process whereby, quote, a commissioner may resign at any time by giving written notice to the chairperson. Or if it appears to a majority of the commissioners that a commissioner is, quote, guilty of neglect of duty or malfeasance, the chair must hold a public hearing before the board following a 15-day public notice. If the board determines that a commissioner is guilty of neglect of duty or malfeasance, it can request that the appointing authority remove the commissioner. This line of authority is clearly stated in the 1997 Intergovernmental Agreement. So, just to summarize, the power to remove a commissioner lies with the appointing authorities. That's the mayors or the county board chair. It does not lie with the Housing Authority Board. Finally, the bylaws state that a commissioner will be considered, quote, to have resigned if he or she has 3 consecutive absences from regularly scheduled meetings without cause. Prior notification to the authority is required for cause. And I would add that prior notification to the commissioners about the meeting schedule is also required. I believe the Housing Authority should follow the processes and respect the spheres of authority outlined in our 1997 Intergovernmental Agreement, and to follow the letter and spirit of the Open Meetings Act and HACC bylaws. This means sending out notices 48 hours in advance of regular monthly meetings, even though the bylaws state that they can be held without notice. I urge the board to take action only on published agenda items at special meetings, even though the bylaws state that, quote, any and all business can be transacted if all the commissioners are present. I urge HACC to maintain basic information on its website. The site has been offline and under construction for months. The public deserves to have access to fundamentals such as office contact information, meeting schedules, staff, and commissioner names and contact information. In light of recent events, I am recommending that all meetings, HACC meetings, be recorded and broadcast on UPTV, like other meetings of public bodies that spend public funds. Most of all, I believe the HACC should respect the right and responsibility of the City of Urbana as the appointing authority to determine who will represent us on the Housing Authority Board. To that end, let me state unequivocally that the City of Urbana stands behind the appointment of Ms. Danielle Chenoweth to the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. According to our intergovernmental agreement and HACC bylaws, we have the responsibility and the authority to appoint her. She has the right and duty to serve. In summary, we are committed to helping people obtain decent, safe, sanitary, and affordable housing in Champaign County. We are committed to proactive and collaborative administration of programs and grant funds that will improve housing in our communities. In Urbana, we are committed to building a strong foundation for the future. That includes working with other organizations and agencies to help meet the basic needs of the people we serve. We look forward to resolving the current difference of opinion with the Housing Authority and working closely with them to help build a better future for our residents. Thank you. Committee to verify bills.
Just a quick question, was there any other public participation? Okay, I just wanted to check and make sure. So, first of all, apologies, there's been a couple of things happening, and so I got you the bills this afternoon, but you'll see a complete amount both in your email and in front of you. I've printed copies. So this month, we are asking for approval of $93,588.07 from the town fund, and $39,523.85 from the general assistance fund. That's a total of $133,111.92. I'm happy to take any questions.
Just, do these salaries include all the pay that's due to people that were let go?
Yes, if you look at salaries, under assessor unrestricted, you will see the total. It's not broken out because so it's both for separated employees and current employees.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mary Alice?
Danielle, can you, under administrative services, we have maximize career services, consulting, what is that expense for?
So Maximize Career Services, a HR consultant that was brought in by the assessors division to accomplish several things. The first is to create, update job descriptions for the chief deputy assessor and deputy assessors. The second was to evaluate the current employees. And the third was to post a job announcement and gather input. That HR consultant, we've separated from that HR consultant. They did deliver on a portion of their contract, but we stopped them before they did their final delivery, which was to complete that. And we're engaging with Cecilia Clark as our only HR consultant with the township. So essentially, as that was for work up until that point.
So out of the three things, they completed those 3 items?
They did complete those 3 items. There were additional things like input on personnel policies and to basically support the hiring process to its conclusion. But we interrupted them so they won't complete that hiring process. We'll complete that internally with additional support. So initially they were capped out at $4,000, and I believe what was paid out was $1,700, I recall.
1720, yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to verify bills? Approve bills?
So moved. I'll second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Ammons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of officers?
So Charlie, if you want to take the annual meeting.
Yes, I provided a brief memo concerning the statute requirements for an annual town meeting. It will be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, April 10th in this location, the council chambers. And there's a much broader area of powers that can occur in a public meeting, some of which don't apply to our township because we have only a supervisor and assessor. And I referred you to a website that has those. And I'm not completely familiar with all of those duties, so I'm hoping to be able to meet with Mr. Grosser, the township attorney, and go over some of the specifics where I have questions. But if you have any questions that we can't answer right now, we can follow up with Fred later. There is a draft agenda here that, of course, is subject to modification based on any input between now and March 1st. But at the March Town Board meeting, we will basically approve the agenda, and I will turn around and do all the publication and required postings.
Bill?
How many people attended the town board meeting last year?
No one attended. Well, no, one person attended with the town clerk, Phyllis Clark.
Okay, and that didn't meet quorum requirements?
No, and the supervisor was not present, yes.
Okay, thanks.
It was the former supervisor.
Yes, I should
Just for
ask, sorry.
clarification. And I was out of town.
Yeah, so one of the questions.
The town meeting doesn't include the town board. We're just citizens. If
Yeah.
we're
That's
not
You're
busy, we
certainly
can go to
welcome
that.
to come.
But it's welcome to. I mean, anybody in town, in Cunningham Township, all the registered voters are welcome to come to that meeting
That's correct.
and vote.
Welcome to direct democracy.
Any
If-
other questions?
Yeah, okay, I'll just do one. So Charlie, do you want to just review for the public what it takes to put something onto the agenda? It's really just 15 signatures, is that correct? To bring an
15
item forward to the
Yeah,
attention?
15 signatures, and I need to get, there's some appropriate wording, I believe, associated with this, and I need to get with Fred to make sure I know exactly what it is.
So is there like a petition that they have to have in hand?
I don't know the details
Yeah,
yet.
okay, thanks.
Just so you know, this is, we'll be looking for adoption later on the agenda. So this is for your information at this point.
No. That's the annual. There's two different kinds of annual meeting schedules here.
Mm-hmm.
The other item is the town board's regular meeting schedule. That's
Oh,
different.
I'm
That's
sorry,
different. Yes,
excuse me.
it sounds
This is-
same. Yes.
okay.
Yeah, this is
That-
just what goes on at the annual town meeting.
For town board. Okay. Thank you.
And it's the second Tuesday in April?
That's correct. At 6 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Okay.
I think it's-
So I will give a report, and then Wayne also has a report. The first is just a brief statement about the Housing Authority issue, attempting not to repeat anything that Diane has already said, but provide both the public and the board some context. So I applied for the Housing Authority Board because I would like to help solve the crisis caused by the lack of housing for low-income families in our community. Both as city council member back from 2001 to 2008 and now as supervisor, I have watched an escalating problem in the lack of low-income housing in CU with deep social problems that can result when children and their families lack stable housing. Last month alone, our office at Cunningham Township had 85 walk-ins. As Martell Miller can attest, if you can raise your hand, Martell, he's our advocate. That's twice as much as last month and 4 times as much as the month before. This includes women sleeping in cars with their children and disabled residents who are homeless simply because they can't afford the deposit for an apartment. When it comes to addressing the current low-income housing crisis, Housing Authority is one of the most important tools in our community. The Housing Authority owns about $12 million in land. It has about a 13 million annual budget. It runs 354 units. It has 1,800 housing vouchers. So when you talk about solving the problem, we have to look at what existing resources are here in the community and do they work. And I think, you know, we said the same thing about the township, and my opinion was the township was not functioning as it should for 4 years. And I think similarly, we can look at the housing authority and say, how can we make sure that we have an efficient use of these dollars? So, as I said to Diane when I first approached her to apply, I said I'm interested in helping the housing authority strengthen into a more effective, efficient, and supportive organization. I want to work closely with you as the city council and the mayor to represent Urbana's interests at the housing authority table, such as ensuring that housing authority is open, transparent, and accountable. That housing authority policy aligns with Urbana's laws and its ethos, such as the Human Rights Ordinance, and that Urbana residents can access much-needed vouchers. Those were really the 3 top priorities I shared with the mayor. When I applied for the Housing Authority appointment, I was asked as a matter of process about any conflicts of interest. I provided a legal opinion from the township attorney with my application. It stated that as long as I recuse myself from discussions and voting on the tax issue, it's not a conflict of interest. On December 18th, the Urbana City Council voted unanimously to appoint me to the Housing Authority Board. Thank you. I was out of town for my father's funeral at the time. He passed away the next day. When I returned, I saw my appointment letter dated January 22nd. Having received no communication from the Housing Authority, I reached out to the interim executive director, Cindy Herrera. It actually took me a week to get her email address because it's not posted on the website. I asked commissioners. I was not able to get it. I actually finally called her personal assistant, office assistant, and I got it. So by January 11th, I asked her, what are the next steps? I haven't heard from you. Could I get a copy of the bylaws? And since the website, which has been offline since September, doesn't contain them, I need to ask you. After a number of attempts to reach her and access the bylaws, on January 24th, we finally sat down. When I asked her in that meeting for the agenda for the meeting, which is scheduled for the next day, she said, oh, we don't have any meeting in January. She said the next meeting would be February 22nd. I had a moment of thinking that there was something going on. So I asked at that time, will there be a special meeting called since it appears you're close to making an offer to the executive director? She said, probably not. It'll be in February. I said, if there is a special meeting, will I be notified as a commissioner? She said, certainly. Several days later, the Housing Authority met without my knowledge, no notification to me or the mayor, and voted, 1, to hire a new executive director, and 2, to, in quotations, reject my appointment. This meeting was in violation of the Open Meetings Act and their bylaws, which state that all commissioners must be notified of meetings. Their attempts to reject my appointment are in violation of the Intergovernmental Agreement and the State of Illinois Housing Authority Act, which clearly outlines the process the board must go through to recommend removal. The Housing Authority raised concerns about the conflict of interest, and this has been spoken about, but I want to add one thing. So the case is interesting, and I think you should look into it. It's a situation where the township assessor recommended and the town board voted in August of 2016 to intervene in the request for property tax exemption by the Housing Authority. Now, I think it's important to know a little bit about that request. So I looked up the lease because I didn't understand this situation. The Housing Authority was claiming that they cannot build affordable housing if you don't provide this exemption. Well, first off, they currently pay taxes for this property, the particular parcel in mind. The second is that according to their lease, the private developer is responsible for all taxes, which are then paid to the Housing Authority, which then go to the taxing bodies. So why is the Housing Authority using public monies to pay for attorneys to defend a case on the behalf of a private developer? The Housing Authority has no financial stake in the outcome of the tax decision. None. After they raised the conflict of interest concern, the township attorney provided legal and statutory citations for our opinion and asked the Housing Authority for theirs. They have provided none to date. Everything that you received was with no citations, no evidence, no due process. I do want to ask you and the public this question, which is if they can treat a sitting commissioner this way, how do you think they treat residents? I call at this point on both cities, Urbana, Champaign, and the county as the 3 appointment authorities to use that authority to bring openness and transparency to the Housing Authority. This is not my struggle. This is our struggle. And you, when you sit as city council in a few minutes, are the appointing authority. And therefore, you are very soon responsible for 3 appointments out of a 7-person board. And as Esther Pat would say, count to 4. So I would like to invite city council members, the public, to come to the next Housing Authority board meeting. It is February 22nd, Thursday at 3 o'clock. It's in the location just west of the Virginia Theater in downtown Champaign on Park Street. That's February 22nd at 3 o'clock. I think it's time for those who pay for the Housing Authority, which is the local tax dollars who send our property taxes to the feds, and then that is returned in a portion to the Housing Authority to know what that body is doing and how it operates. It should be working for us, and it should be working for low-income residents. And I look forward to working cooperatively with the commissioners, with the hired staff, and with this board and the other public entities to ensure the mission of the Housing Authority. Thank you. Go ahead.
To the best of my knowledge, from what I see here, their legal standing is baseless. I would like to know if you have a theory as to why this is taking place.
It's a good question to ask them. I don't know. It's puzzling.
Fair enough. Thank you.
So I have a second portion, and I tried to keep this brief because I knew your evening would be very long. I just want to point out, in addition to the walk-in stat that I gave you, general assistance participants are at 67, up from 60 last month. I want to talk about our homeless assistance program. I think it's been super successful. I'm very happy with this program. We have helped 33 households or 53 total homeless individuals since the program started November 17th. That includes 20 residents who were supported with eviction prevention assistance. That essentially means someone who can demonstrate they have no other option but homelessness. If they're evicted, they have a 5-day notice, and we provide up to $900 to keep them in their current house. That's been hugely successful. Second, we've supported 33 residents with emergency shelter, where we put residents up in Urbana motels, and we have not had anyone stay longer than 12 days, even though our limit is 30 days. So that shows that our office is able to turn people around into either more permanent housing, referral to another agency, get them into a shelter, etc. The total number of children served out of that 53, 24 of them are children. That's almost half of the people who are served. The total cost, and I find this very interesting, the total cost is just over $8,500. We've averaged $162 per person to house folks. I actually expected that to be 4 times as much. Our advocacy clients is up. These are people who are not helped by assistance or general assistance or homeless assistance, but we advocate for them in other ways to connect them to resources. 65 folks, up from 63. Our total clients are at 185, up from 137 last month. We are having a good time. Okay? Goal setting. I am very pleased that you all, as a council and the mayor, continue to work cooperatively on setting long-range goals. I'm aware that this month you're focused on it, and you just had a lengthy meeting. I would like to suggest, as township supervisor, since we do have daily contact with many of the poorest residents of Urbana, that you create the following to consider these two goals. The first is to ensure adequate emergency and transitional shelter serving all Urbana residents and families who are in the life-threatening circumstance of living without shelter. And I think this can come through collaboration with the county entities I mentioned. Second, I would like you to consider adding as a goal to work to end discrimination in the city of Urbana by educating about and enforcing the Urbana Human Rights Ordinance. And third, and I do have specific ideas about tactics that can be used to work towards these, to measure them and to evaluate them. But these broad goals I'd like you to consider, and I'm happy to discuss. In addition, I'd like to ask you as the city council to review the financial impacts of video gambling on low-income Urbana residents and to consider increasing limitations on video gambling within city limits. So that's in terms of goal setting, and I just have a couple announcements, and we'll wrap up. Winter Coat Drive, we've now distributed hundreds of items. The thing we need most is gloves and mittens and hats and coats, but especially gloves and mittens. We cannot keep gloves and mittens, so if anyone wants to go to Sam's Club and buy a big pack and drop it by, we would be very happy, or Farm and Fleet. Urbana business. Second, I wanted to introduce Tomas Delgado, who I think is still in the audience. Tomas is our new office administrator, and he has joined us because our office administrator up till this date had resigned due to health issues, and we had been working together over the last 3 months to ameliorate them, and she had chosen to resign to take care of herself. So Tomas has stepped up. Third, I wanted to give an update on personnel policies. We are currently updating our personnel policies to address and structure discipline and terminations, as I mentioned in a memo to you mid-month. I'm still happy to get input from any and all town board members on that issue, and I know Mary Alice, we have an outstanding meeting that we need to schedule for that. And then last but not least, I would like to present a certificate of appreciation. This person is someone who drove to Montana to pick up a scooter for a resident client of ours, brought it back to Urbana, fixed it, then brought it to our office, fixed it again, and then dropped it off with a person who essentially had been shut in because she was unable to walk. And she now has a functioning scooter, and that is kind of above and beyond the call of service. And so I'd like to present this certificate of appreciation to H.D. Hazen. He earned this certificate for his volunteer service to Cunningham Township. So
Montana, South Dakota, it all looks the same.
Oh, South Dakota, sorry about that. So if anyone else would like to drive a far distance to get something extremely valuable for our participants, you too can earn a certificate of appreciation.
To be fair, I was going there anyway, but thank you for your kind words. So.
Yes. Well, these small things make a huge difference in folks' lives, and so it's appreciated. So I will now ask if there are questions about my report, and then allow Wayne to give his report if there are no questions. Go ahead.
I'd just like to thank you for steadfastly standing for the principles and the intent of the township and fighting the good cause. I think that perhaps when you actually take your seat, your rightful seat on the Housing Authority, it might be a shock for some who perhaps have not been handling some of their authority perhaps the most efficiently way. And so I hope to see Perhaps maybe there'll be a house cleaning, or maybe there'll at least be a straightening.
Thank you.
Aaron?
So, just on the heels of all of the dynamic work and everything that you have shared, I want to say, and just to clarify for those who have been asking me, whether it's the media or other residents, where I stand on this issue. As a trustee of the Cunningham Town Board, I want to say that I stand 100% behind the township staying intact as it is currently structured. The services provided by our township are critical to our citizens, in particular those most in need, and we should not interrupt those services. So I guess folks can stop asking me how I feel about that, okay? All right, thank you, Danielle.
Yep. And I just want to mention also that I included in your packet our updated application, and it lays out very clearly in grid form exactly the criteria for homeless assistance and general assistance. And so feel free to share that with whomever in your networks. They can distribute the application. People can fill it out before they come to our office. And if you have questions about the criteria, let me know. With that, I'll pass it to Wayne.
You guys are going to have to start letting me go first. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. But the 2018 Senior Exemption Status and Freeze application mailing has been compiled and mailed. My office will handle any questions or taxpayer assistance that is needed. Additionally, we'll monitor all received applications and status forms to ensure anyone who is entitled to an exemption will have proper notice and follow-up through my office. The deadline for return of these forms is December 31st of this year. 2018 assessment work is currently in progress, and our goal is to have everything submitted to the county by the end of May, ahead of the June 15 statutory deadline. All new construction and properties that receive permits will be measured in value, as well as properties requiring value adjustments due to remodeling will also be revalued during this time. One of the bills to be reviewed was the annual license fee for Visual PAMS Pro. Thank you for approving that. The assessor's office will begin adding remaining and new records into the Visual PAMS Pro system. The data entry will begin the transition from ICAS to Visual PAMS Pro. Data entry is expected to continue over the next several months. I'm currently reviewing Cunningham Township's 20 established assessment neighborhoods. These neighborhoods have been assigned by the previous administrations. These neighborhoods will be individually reviewed to determine which areas require value adjustments to assure conformity to state statutory guidelines based on yearly and 3-year sales studies. Based on the most recent sales studies, our price-related differential and coefficient of dispersion, both indicators of assessment disparity and uniformity respectfully, are both outside Illinois Department of Revenue guidelines. I'll be looking at ways to provide assessments with greater accuracy and better compliance with state guidelines. Any questions?
Dennis?
Do you want to maybe make a real short comment about your preference for Visual Pro? What is the program that you've switched to? What was the fault that you found with the previous program?
Well, no, it's not a previous program. Visual PAMS was a program that was purchased by the previous administration. There was an upfront fee of about, it was either $39,000 or $32,000. I think it was bought back in 2011. There's an annual license fee of about $3,900. Before I took office, I did look at other CAMA software that stands for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal. All the different CAMA software providers I looked at, they all have a big upfront fee ranging between $20,000 and $40,000, and then it will be annual licensing fees in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. I felt that considering the amount of financial resources the township has put into Visual PAMS, it was not prudent to switch to another system.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Aaron?
There was a citizen who came to speak about that property, a slither of the property that was being, I don't know, being taken out from under her, or that it wasn't really her property. This Joe guy, I think you know. Nasty Joe from the last month. I was wondering if you had any opportunity to look into that at all, to have any.
I've had a little bit. I've had other things on my plate, but that is still something I'm looking into.
Okay.
Our Community Development Department actually has looked into that.
And what, is there something coming that we want to talk, that we're going to hear of?
Sure, John can.
Kevin Garcia did an analysis of all the odd-shaped properties in the city of Urbana. And of those that were outlots, he eliminated the outlots. If somebody has a sign on the property, it's a kind of an outlot that wouldn't be tagged. He was able to find one property that was identified as a potential, and it's listed as owned by the Champaign County trustee. So basically, I sent that email with the information to the mayor, and she's going to forward it to the county treasurer, and we'll figure out who would contact. We certainly are willing to contact the adjacent property owners, and also Mr. Farney, I think, would do that too. Now that they have accurate information we provided the information about who owns the adjacent properties, but we were only able to locate one like that.
And the particular case that we were talking about, the lady who came to speak to us, did you all look into that one as well?
Well, that one was already completed, and there was nothing that we could do about that. That's going to have to be, because the way the process works, it goes goes into the Champaign County trustee, and then they notify all the adjacent property owners if anybody has interest, and they can acquire it through them. Well, this went up for auction, and Nasty Joe's bought it. So it was a deed that had already been committed and transferred to Nasty Joe's by the time the lady actually found out about it. So there's nothing that the city can do about it. It has to deal with probably the courts might have something to say about that.
And you're saying that the assessment basically, well, I shouldn't say assessment, but what Kevin did as far as looking at the other properties in the county, we found one that would be
in the city of
in
Urbana.
the city of Urbana. We found one.
We found the one that's tagged as owned by Champaign County trustee, which might be something that would fall within that arena. So
Okay.
we're in the process of notifying the property owners, the adjacent property owners.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Wayne.
I was going to say something about this. The person who spoke to us reached out to me by email, and I just shared my experience in a similar situation quite a number of years ago. And I don't know if it would pertain to her or to other people like this, but I alluded to this very briefly, but I can tell the story in more detail. It's decades ago. But we got a letter from an attorney who said that he represented the property owner adjacent to us, and that he determined that the property owner owned half our garage and driveway, and it would be willing to sell it to us. So we consulted an attorney, and maybe the law has changed, maybe the situation was particular, but our attorney suggested to us to ignore the letter because of the principle of adverse possession. We'd been there for a long, our structure had been there for a long time. They had no rights, no matter what the, what the boundary was in the real estate records. So we got another letter, which we also ignored, and then that was the end of it. We haven't heard for approximately 25 years. So I guess we won't. Well, since then, that property changed ownership and so forth. We got better neighbors. So the mayor is smiling because she and John actually bought that property subsequent to that. But so I just shared that with her, and I said, this is not legal advice. Consult your own attorney is my advice.
You can have the garage. Thank you. Do you have anything else, Wayne?
No.
But
Okay.
I think Board Member Wu.
Oh, Mary Alice.
I was busy taking notes, and I didn't quite catch what you were talking about, the 20 neighborhoods, and if you could walk through that maybe a little bit slower, what you were working on.
So Cunningham Township has 20 assessment neighborhoods. These are not going to be these are assessment neighborhoods, not necessarily the same geographic boundaries as the traditional neighborhoods that you think about within the city. And I'm going to be looking at each neighborhood individually, see where the numbers are, see where the median levels are, to see if there needs to be any factoring or anything to get everything to conformity with statute.
So does that mean that that all the neighborhoods are assessed at a different amount? There's not like, let's say that the amount that goes up in terms of 5%, sales are up 5%, so everybody's not assessed at 5. They're at the individual neighborhood.
Right.
As defined by the system.
Right. So I have a listing of all the neighborhoods and all the sales from the last 3 years. Every neighborhood, what we do is we look at median levels. So we group the sales by ratio, and we take out the median, which is that middle number, and we're aiming for a 33.33% ratio, where half of the assessments are below that, half the assessments are above that. But there are other measures that we also look at. We look at the coefficient of dispersion, which measures the range between the high and the low from the median. We look at price-related differential, which measures assessment bias. Are higher price homes getting assessed higher or lower than lower price homes? So I'm looking at all of that. Right now, the numbers are not where the state guidelines say they should be. Some of that you can correct by factoring. Some you can't. Some you just have to go and reassess the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. We have one new business, 2 items.
So, new business is ordinance number T-2018-2-1, an ordinance establishing a policy to prohibit sexual harassment in the town of Cunningham, Illinois. You have before you both an ordinance and a policy. If you dig deep, it's the last pages in your packet. Those pages are pages 16 through, I believe it is 21. So the first is the ordinance itself. This is required by state law. I'm happy to say, and essentially all the different governing bodies are putting forward these. We have had a sexual harassment policy on the supervisor side for a number of years. This basically will replace that and provide more definition and detail. The only thing I would add is that we took a look at the state model policy. The we meeting, particularly our legal and myself, and it was very complicated and impacted it was for very large communities. It was probably 12 or 13 pages, very difficult to train an employee on that amount. What I did instead is I borrowed the policy that the city of Champaign Township is putting forward to their town board tomorrow, which is much more simple and straightforward. Made sure with Fred that it met all the requirements, and so that's what you see here. What I like about that is it actually also we've been trying to have both townships have very similar programs, similar grant amounts, and in this case we would have a similar sexual harassment policy as well. Any questions?
Dennis?
No, I think it's fine. So I make a motion that we adopt ordinance number T-2018-02-001, establishing a policy to prohibit sexual harassment in the township of Cunningham, Illinois.
I'll second.
Moved by Dennis, second by Jared. Any further discussion? All those in, should we a roll call?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Trustees Emmons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Adoption of the annual meeting schedule?
Yes, and now that I understand this would be adopting the schedule for you, the town board, for this year, 2018, and Charlie sent it to you, and I've included it here, as well as resent it this afternoon.
Is there a motion?
I'll move that we accept the meeting schedule as presented.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Eric. Any discussion or questions? Voice. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Seeing no further business before the town board, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.